Thank you for joining us today for the second Atlantic Crossing Weather and Equipment webinar. My name is Nick Olson, and I'll be presenting the webinar today. I'll just quickly cover off what we're going to talk about today. Very briefly, going to talk about the apps, just so you know. Everyone knows that there is two different pieces of software that you can use. Then we're going to talk about polars. And then we're going to talk about departure planning. So we'll do all of that in the PredictWind website. And then we will flick over to the Offshore app, and we are going to do weather routing and download grids and all the other things that we want to get. And we're going to first of all do a download as though we are departing. And then we're going to do a download as though we are at sea using an Iridium Go connection. So we'll talk about sort of file sizes, what you might want to download, and a little bit of a process that you can at least start to think about, so you can develop your own process that you like to follow when you're offshore and getting your weather routing. So so here I am I'm in the PredictWind sales website, and so we have two different apps. We have the PredictWind app, which is what you use when you're in port or at home or at the marina if you're in Wi-Fi and cell range. Huge amount of information in there. You can set stuff up in there and do some practice and look at your local forecasts and whatnot. Most of when you're looking at forecasts in there, they are location specific, but as I said, you can do your departure planning and weather routing in there, and we set up other stuff in there. The PredictWind website, forecast.predictwind.com, that's really important to be able to know how to access that, and that's where we will go shortly, because that's where we set up our wave polars. And then we have the PredictWind Offshore apps, and so the reason it says apps is that you can use them on different platforms. So the PredictWind Offshore app is what we use when we are on a satellite connection, or SSB, or we are going just outside of cell range and we want to save our data offline. So everything you download into the Offshore app stays there until you replace it. So if you download say some ocean data, and then on your next download you don't, it will stay there. So but that's mainly what we'll be looking at today, is the Offshore app. The Offshore app is available on Mac, PC, so your laptops, and also on iOS, so your iPad, your iPhone, and then Android, so your Android phone or tablet, so your Samsung, Huawei, or whatever Android device you have. It works on those too. So that is really the apps. So let's get into it. You'll see here I am in the Canaries. And we can zoom out and we can have a look at our wind maps and whatnot. And this might be something that we would look at prior to our departure, looking at the big picture stuff, watching looking at this every day and looking at how systems are developing, what's going on. The more you do this, the more you look at the weather, the more you'll see patterns, and the more you understand what's going on. We could even go back a step, and in our local knowledge feature, we actually have a bunch of seasonal weather data. And if I zoom out, you can see that there's all of these passages here. And if I click on one of them, passage in Spain. Anyway, let's click on another one. I don't know what that one is. Here we are. And I can come in here and I can see the seasonality. So these are much like pilot charts. You can see, what the seasonal wind directions are. So here we're looking at the October average. I can click over here and look at the historical weather, and I can, click on the windrows for November, say, and you can see that for that route, it shows us our seasonal wind directions, which is why people start crossing at this time of the year. So as I say, we can start really big, really broad, and then we, with our wind maps, looking at all the different models and on a global scale, and understand what's going on. And then once we get a bit further down the track, we can start looking at the departure planning tool. And what this does is it's a really, a quick reference for what it will look like if we leave on one day or another. Even if you're doing a coastal hop, you might be doing a 12-hour passage, you can actually drop the time spacing down and see, if I leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, what's it going to look like, as opposed to if I leave at midday or 10 o'clock. So just a tool to help you get those weather windows and, and make better decisions. So before we do our departure planning and before we do our weather routing, we need to set up our polars. So we can do that in departure planning. Just to make it simple for everyone, let's go to weather routing and just, look at the routing preferences and set up our polars. So and I know that we did mention this last week, but it's super important. And so that's why we're going to cover it again. Your polars, if you don't know what they are, it is how fast the software thinks your boat is going to go in any given weather condition. So we can choose the predefined list, the sail polar, or the advanced polar. Advanced is you can actually adjust your polars. You can see here it's quite a extensive list. You don't have to do this. You don't have to get into that, but if you want to, you can. So, but if we want to keep things simple, we can come in here and in the predefined list, and we can look through and find our boat design, or one that is similar to ours, because we only need to choose, we can choose one that is similar to ours, and then we could adjust these polar percentages up or down to give a better reflection of how our boat performs. We can, and I'll talk about this polar percentage again later. We can also adjust our depth avoidance, so the router will not sail you into shallow waters. It's not a navigation tool, but it gives you better routes. So you can adjust that if you want, use a depth contour of 10 meters or 5 meters or whatever you choose. And we can also choose our ocean current model that the router is going to use. So again, we can adjust that in the Offshore app. So we'll look at that later. The wave polar, don't be afraid of this. It is a new feature, but it is just look at it. You can dive into it if you want to, but set it up, turn it on, and then become comfortable with it. As you look at it over time, you will understand what it's doing. So you turn that on, you have this advanced wave polar over here, you turn that off. Here, this little tick box, we can use the predefined boat dimensions. If we have got a bunch of stuff on board, we can increase this displacement number or any of these other numbers here if we want to. I'm just going to use the predefined ones because I don't actually have whatever it was I chose, a Lagoon 52. So I don't actually know, but yeah, so we can set that up. And then if you don't know what those figures are, there is an explainer in here of what all those terms mean. So let's get out of there. If you do have questions about weather routing, about polars, reach out to our support team. I'll talk about polars a bit more later when we look at the output from our weather routing, and we can see whether the polars are matching what we know our boat does. So let's go back to departure planning. So again, we have our green start waypoint and our red destination waypoint, and we can adjust those up here on this right hand side. I can click on that little teardrop icon there, and I can, if you'll see, if I move these, it changes the lat long, and so I can put them into there. You'll see I've got a bunch of I've saved routes in here from some different things I've done, that just so that if I click on one of those, it will take me to the lat long that I had set up for those routes. So we've got our start set and our finish destination set. We can come over here and we can change our start time. So I'm just going to do it now, but I could put a time in the future. Can get the calendar out. Hey, let's just do it let's move a day ahead. And so then it's going to give me departure times from tomorrow onwards, and then our spacing between those departure times that the router will give me is 24 hours apart. And as I said before, if we were doing a little coastal hop, we can actually change that time period. I'm going to leave it on 24. Close that little box. You'll see here I've got my time. That's where I am in Auckland in New Zealand. But it should set to where you are. If we're in the Offshore app uses the time of your computer. So I'll talk about that again later. I'll mention it at least. Let's close that and then just click on the download button there, or the calculate button, to calculate our departure planning. And you'll see there the map is loaded already. That's our wind map is loaded already. And while that's that's loaded but at the moment our servers are calculating all of the different routes, so for all the different models, and then those different departure times. So billions of calculations are happening right now. So it is the weather router is extremely clever. It is calculating basically every scenario and working out the fastest route. And the reason we use the fastest route for departure planning is that if we started putting comfort settings in there and we're trying to avoid different conditions, then that wouldn't really give us a true reflection of if we departed at those different times, it would be skewed in between each one. So we don't do that. We only do it for the fastest time. And you'll see there it's downloaded the routes, but we don't really, and you see the boats leave at the different times for all the different departure times. But that's not our real tool as such for this feature. The real sort of thing we want to look at in here is the tables, and we can look at the tables in two ways. So the default is the summary, which we see here, or if we wanted to split it out, we could actually look at the different models and the different times. But for simplicity, we're just going to look at the average of the models, and because we're trying to look for a time to depart, we don't, we can drill into the detail with our weather routing, and so for the departure planning, we are going to look at these averages. So you can see here, for each departure time, they're a day apart at 10 o'clock in the morning, very civilized. And then I've got all these details for what happens if I leave at that time. And you see, as the days go on, the passage time is, well, up until day 3 is slightly shorter. So we've got less time at sea. We come down here, and the max wind speed for the passage and the minimum wind speed, and you see it gets pretty light. But let's remember, these are average wind speeds. So that max wind speed there, that 25 knots, that's actually the average wind speed. It's not the gusts. So down here we've got our gusts, and so you can see we have 34, 38 nearly there. And the later we leave, the lower the maximum is. So because we want to go, we've got a catamaran, we don't really want to be going upwind, but you can see here that we've got the percentage of time upwind, percentage of time downwind, and we can look at all these numbers and go, okay, we're mostly reaching, that's good, because we don't want to sail upwind, we don't want to smash upwind. And then we can see here those times and the different wind speeds. And I'm sort of starting to think that the later we leave might be better, because it's shorter times. We don't have as high a peak wind speeds. Our average wind speeds are lower, so that might be better. But really what we want to do is we want to come down here and we can see our wave heights, and so some of these actually are quite big, time and waves that are wind swell and wind wave, that's combined swell and wind wave above 5 meters. That's possibly a little bit concerning. And then we can come down here and we can see our wave routing. So before, when we set up our boat and we put the dimensions in, so that has created a hydrodynamic model, and we know that, and so we can know what's going to happen with the wind wave, the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary swell, how that's going to react. Our boat's going to react to that. So you can see here time with greater than 4 degrees of roll. So it's RMS. It's not just 4 degrees of roll. It's the root mean square. Don't need to worry about what that means. It's a level. So we say more than 4 is uncomfortable. So you see here, movement around boat is difficult and unsafe. So you can see here in these first 3 departures, we do get a small amount of that. We don't have any real time with greater than 0.2 Gs of vertical acceleration. That's your lift and fall. So that's okay. And then we've got no boat slamming. So they're all okay. I guess if I look at the wave sizes here, I don't particularly like the bigger ones. I would probably look at leaving on this 4th day. So what I would do now is I would come and look at this, and I would go, okay, I want to depart on the 24th of October. It's actually my mum's birthday. And so I'm sure she'll be wrapped. That we would go into our weather routing, and we would set our departure time in the weather routing for the 24th of October. And then we would start analyzing what we think that departure time looks like. So this has given us some idea of when we might like to depart. And sometimes it's really, really clear in here, and sometimes as to should I go or shouldn't I? And then other times it's like, this is not massive, but there are a few factors there that I don't particularly like. So I'm going to go for this, go and look at this, the 24th of October. I might go and look at that in the weather routing and decide I don't like it, and come back and start again. So we need to take time to get this stuff right, and take lots of factors into account. We would go back and we would look at our we'd go back and look at our wind maps and rain maps, and look for, is there a frontal band coming through? Is there high levels of cape? We need to drill into it, but that's what we would do in our weather routing. So we have looked at that. We have set up our polars, so they're all set, and so now we have to set our wave polar up in here in forecast.predictwind, in our planning preferences or our weather routing preferences. We have to set that up in there. While we're here, we can also add ourselves to a GPS tracking group. I added myself last week to the, I think I'm in the Viking Explorers. I know I've taken myself out, but that's what you can see on there. So yeah, they do the rally across the Atlantic, and I'm just in their group. But so I can add myself to the group here. Probably easiest if we just whack up a tutorial about that, if you want to add yourself to a tracking group. If you're in a rally, you can see YB tracking as well, or have your own GPS tracking, add your buddy boats and that sort of thing. I'm going to stop screen sharing there, and I am going to do another screen share. and we're going to go to the Offshore app. There we go. Okay, so I'm actually going to have a quick drink. Okay, so we are in the Offshore app. So this is what we use when we are going offshore or out of cell phone range or on our cellular connection. I have downloaded a bunch of stuff already and had a look at this route. And so, but yeah, so we can come in here. I'm still in port. I have got a land-based Wi-Fi connection. I can get as much data as I like. So before I leave on my trip, I'm going to get, I just need to move my Zoom controls, excuse me. I'm going to get as much information as I can, and I'm going to do, for the week before, I'm going to be downloading my weather routing and my grids and everything, and I'm going to be looking at it every single day. And I'm going to be looking at how the weather changes, especially once I get a projected departure time in there. I'm going to be looking at how that weather evolves after each model run. And what I mean by that model run is each time the forecast updates. So they're updating every 12 hours. And so after those models have updated, I want to run my weather routing, get my grids, and look at it. Okay. So so let's start at the beginning here. I've got everything downloaded here. I've got my start point in here. Again, Zoom controls in the way. And I've got my start and finish waypoints. So I can, as I said, I can do that with my lat long. I could have some saved courses in there. Anyway, I've got that all set up. So what I want to do, once we've got those things, the start and finish in place, is I want to come over here to download. And because I'm doing this before we leave, I want to download everything I can. So you'll see here, I've got all these time steps set, that time step set at 3 hourly. I've got 10 days, which is the maximum number of grids. I'm doing 50-kilometer resolution because we're looking at a huge area. I've got all the models. I've got every parameter. I've got my start time set as now. I could make that, in 2 hours time or whatever I chose, just so that it was actually reflecting when we were going to be out there, or I could be looking at it for tomorrow. Let's just stick with now. I can come in here and I can adjust any of my parameters I want. So already I know I'm going to be sailing a bit slower at night. So I'm just going to put 90% in there for at night. You'll see here I've got my my polar is reflected in here that I'd set up before in the forecast website. I've got my motoring settings there. At the moment, I'm not going to turn them on. My wave polar is turned on. I've got the current model that the router is using. I've got my depth avoidance. So these are all the things that I can change within the Offshore app. So I can do this when I'm offshore. Just close that there. Okay, so I'm doing weather routing. I'm not doing departure planning. And the destination forecast, that would actually just give me tables for the red spot. So we don't want to do that. We use that when we are in a remote location where we only have a sat connection, for instance, and we want to get weather for just that location. We've got the GMDSS text forecast and the GMDS graphical forecast. We want those. It's going to give us any warnings about nasties forming. Observations, we're doing too big an area to get that, so I'll turn that off. I'll move my Zoom controls again, and I'll click on next down here. So if you are on your iPad or a tablet, these controls do look slightly different, but all the functionality is the same. So yeah, you can do that. Again, it's too big to an area to get my SST, and one of my currents won't load, but that's fine. We don't need the high resolution tidal currents. But basically, I'm getting everything I can for this big passage. Satellite imagery, we'll get it just because we can. My GPS and AIS data, I'm going to get that. If I was in a rally, I could get the YB tracking too, if they were using YB, although you might be in a rally that they're using PredictWind tracking, and you can just get that there. We always want to get all the stuff before we leave while we're on Wi-Fi, so that everything's downloaded into the Offshore app. And then if we don't get it again while we're on our SAT connection, that's fine, because we've already loaded some stuff. Of course, we'll be getting these all the time when we're offshore, this GPS and AIS. And I click on next, and it tells me that my RTOFS grid is too big, and that's fine. That's what this little symbol means here. It's told me that it's too big. Okay, yes, I know that. Thank you. So we've got all of our groups that we're going to download here. You can see this is a massive file. We've got some really big groups here. That's cool, and we can download this all because we are on our web connection. I'm not going to make you wait around while we do that one. It would only take a couple of minutes, but we can move on, because we're going to actually do this whole process again, and we're going to pretend that we're on our Iridium Go. So I've downloaded these already. You can see here we're underway. But before I actually got underway, I would actually go through all of these and see what we're looking at for the short term and the longer term. And especially with this stuff that we have at the moment, I would be looking at my longer term picture. And I can run through all of these different parameters. I can look at the wind, the rain. I'd look at the rain to see if I can see any frontal bands. The gusts. Sometimes your route can look quite different if you're looking at the gusts. All of a sudden you realize that that 20 knot average has actually got 35 knot gusts with it, so you're going to need to prepare and sail differently. Cape, I'm looking for cape as convective available potential energy. If I see rain and cape together, that's not going to make me very happy, because that's potential for thunderstorms. And I would get, if it was on my route or close to my route, I would actually get a little warning would pop up on my route to make me go and look. You can see there that we do have some higher levels of cape, but we sort of seem to miss them. And then we know that if we have a look at our rain, that we don't actually have any moisture with it as well. So we're not too concerned about that. But as we go through our passage and we're downloading weather, that's just some stuff that we want to look at. I've got my AIS turned off at the moment because I'm in port, but let's just go back and have a look. You can see that gets pretty busy on the map. I've got the GMDSS. I'll just turn that back off again. I've got the GMDSS turned on, and we can see that there's something to be looked at here. It's a long way in front of us, so we probably don't need to be too concerned about it, and it's probably moving this way. But what we can do, what have I done there? Oh, I've added a point. Hang on. Get out. So I can come over here, and I can sort of see, what my lat long is for this feature. So we've got, let's say it's 18 north, 42 west. So when I click on this, the reason I am looking at what the lat long is there is that when I click on this and I come in here and I see this, I would need to know where it is that I'm looking at. So if I come down here, storm warning, no, that's not me. Gale warning, gale warning. So if I come down here and somewhere, I'm pretty sure I'll see warnings. No, that's Gulf of Mexico. I must have gone past it. Because I'm in a rush. where is it? So this is why we have these warnings in a graphical form, is that so that we can see, we can see them without having to scroll through this too much. I did see it before. Anyway, I won't spend all day with me not being able to see something that I know is there. But that's why we have it. So you can look at this feature and go, what is it? Go into the GMDSS, read what they're talking about, and find it. Sure, if I went back now, I would see it. But if we had any other stuff like that on there, we would be able to look through and see what we're looking for there. Okay, so yeah, then we would come over to our tables and start looking at our our near-term stuff. So I would look at my graph, and in my graph I can see I have this the breeze dropping in my first day and then increasing back up into my second and third days. Don't need to worry too much about the future. I mean, if we want to if we were planning this departure time, yes, we would be looking at all of this, but in reality, looking at those trends, it doesn't look anything too extreme. Our wind direction is very stable across all the models. So that's the easy thing we're looking for here, is a bit of consensus across the models, and we can see them all. The trends across all these models are actually pretty good, especially in the longer term. So it's pretty cool. And then again, our wind direction across all the models is pretty steady for all our weather routes. So this is good stuff. We've got 6 weather models all saying that they think that roughly the same thing's going to happen. And I'll just quickly scroll down here, and we can see our Cape levels rise. Is that in line with my rain? In the future, it is, but we'll be downloading more weather routes along the way, so we can keep looking at that. And again, it's probably not something we would particularly try and avoid. I don't know whether we'd change our route to avoid that, but we might just be aware, unless it looked really, really bad, like it was going to be a huge amount of thunderstorms. But it might, we might just use that when we get there too, especially if it's going to be at night. Well, everyone on the crew would be aware that we've got the potential for thunderstorms, and so to keep a lookout for that when you're on watch, and be prepared to reduce sail. At night, we might sail with with our sail reduced, just because we can't see stuff coming. Yes, we can see it on the radar, but yeah, hard to see. The pressure drops as we go. We can also look at the pressure here for now, and we can compare that to what we have on our barometer on board. Wave height. What I really want to do with this is I want to come down here, and I want to look at we've got our currents there. So coming out of the Canaries, might want to have a look at those currents, current directions, influence of waves on the polar. So this is our role. This is what I wanted to look at. What safety protocols beyond what we normally have would we need to change any of them? So the roll, we've got 2 degrees RMS of roll. So we say 4 starts to get nasty. I have had people say that have been using this saying that 3 can get pretty uncomfortable. So we are aware that as we get out there, that we are going to be there is going to be a bit of wave motion on the boat, and then also our vertical acceleration, it's very low. It's 0.05. 0.2 is where we start to anyone can, some people can get seasick in anything. Some people are very resilient, but we know that at 0.2, that vertical acceleration is really starting to affect you. Slamming incidents, there's nothing there. So we've got a bunch of things that we can look at there. There's nothing that's sort of too alarming in the longer term for the route. And now we want to come back and actually start looking at stuff in the short term. So let's have a look at what we've got on board, you know. So let's look at our instruments. What's the wind speed that we're seeing? You know, what direction are we seeing? And you know, which of these models is lining up closest to that? I mean, the reality is that between them all, there's not a huge amount of difference. You know, the ECMWF's got 19 knots. I just saw the others were 18 and 20. So we can see which ones, you know, matching up, that they're all pretty similar. So in the short term, so this is now, you know, what's happening between now and when we're going to update our weather again, and is there anything I need to be aware of in this 12 to 24 hour time zone? And you know, when I just briefly look at these, I look at the true wind speeds, we've got a, you know, a bit of a decline there. You know, are we jibing? No, we're not. You know, our course isn't changing majorly, and this is where we can see our speeds, our boat speeds. So when I talked earlier about when we set up our polars and we look at the outputs, so in 19 knots at 166 true wind angle, so that's pretty deep. We're on starboard tack, that's what the S means. You know, 9 knots. So does my boat do 9 knots and 20 knots of breeze, you know, sailing downwind? Now, that doesn't sound too unreasonable to me. It might be a pinch high. As I say, I don't have a Lagoon 52. So yeah, I don't know. But if we were underway and we, after a couple of days, we're like, you know, we're never quite getting to where the routing says we are, we can go into that download box, which we'll look at again in a minute, and we'll go in there and we'll change it. We could bring that down. But so short term, we can make a plan. We can get some coordinates of where we want to go. So we could go back to our map and we could say, you know, where are we going to be in the next, so this is, let's get to our start time. So this is, where are we going to be by 7 o'clock tonight or 8 o'clock tonight? And we can come in here. I'll just change my map back to wind because I like looking at wind. And where am I going to be? So you see there, that's 10 to 9 tonight. So I'm in New Zealand, so that's my local time. So yeah, the computer, that's the time. The time on the map that I'm looking at here is the time on my computer. So I know that this isn't the time over in the Canaries at the moment. But if I was over there, I'd change the time on my computer to the local time. Or whatever time I wanted to use. It's all relative to what you have, but that's the time it's taking. So you can see here, we have our, you know, what are we going to do between now and then? You know, we can, how much wind do we got? What are we going to sail? What angle are we going to sail? Where are we going to? I can click on here. I should be able to, I'll zoom in on it. I can click on here and I can get my lat long, and I can put my lat long into my chart plotter. And so we've got some, so, you know, we know where we're going. So I could put, you know, 26, 28 northern and 16, 19 western to my chart plotter, and I can have that little waypoint on the screen. And so we all know where we're going. I could add several of them. In the tables, there's actually a, you know, we can actually get those points, and we can actually grab those lat longs and put them in there. So we would, you know, we want to have maybe any time there's a, you know, a significant event. So and what I mean by that is a direction change, a jibe. We would want to put our waypoint where that event is. But generally a 6 and a 12 and then a 24 projection would be what we'd be looking at. And then each time we update our weather, we will do that again. Okay, so I will zoom in on our point here. So let's say that it's now 8 o'clock tonight, or 8:30, or you know, or 9, and we have we've sailed to here. and we want to update our weather. And so we've no longer got Wi-Fi. We've no longer got any other connection other than our satellite connection. So now we're into how we're going to sail when we're basically for the next 15 days or whatever it is it's going to take you to get across the Atlantic. So I'm going to come up here on this, so we've moved our start waypoint here, and so I could have gone in here and typed in my lat long to get that position, or if I had my Iridium Go on, there'd be a little white dot on the screen, and I can just move this green start waypoint to wherever we are. So that's, I know this seems really obvious, but when we run our new weather route, it needs to be from where we are in the ocean. So our destination hasn't changed, but what we can do, so we've got our start waypoint to where we are now, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on this grid button. I'm going to close that, and you'll see here I've got this massive area selected. And so what I need to start doing now is managing my file size. And so I can drag these this box around, and this is the grib area I'm going to download. And so what we're going to do first of all is we're going to download all the models, and we're going to look at all our routes, and we're going to look at our short-term planning. So, and I mean 12, 24, 36 hours. Then after we've done that, we're going to come back and we're going to change our parameters, and we're going to do a bigger picture, and we're going to just look at one model, and we're going to do, let's say, wind and pressure, just so that we've got a feeling of what's going on in the big picture stuff. So, but first of all, we're going to make this area small, because this is the weather that we're going to be looking at in the short term. So I've made that area small. I may need to adjust that. I'm not sure yet, but you can see that, yeah, so that'll change our grib area. And you can see here my grib is still 473, but there's other things that we can change there that will fix that. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click on download. If I was on my iPad or tablet, there's a green button up the top right that I'd tap on. So I've clicked on download, and this box has popped up, and this is where we need to adjust our parameters. And you don't need to be adjusting this all the time. Like, yes, we had everything turned on for when we were leaving. We were getting all the information we could, but now we're on our SAT connection. We need to choose wisely. I'm actually going to come across here so that we can do this even better. I know that my ocean data, so my currents files, are huge. So I'm going to turn them off now. I've downloaded them. I'm going to be able to still see that data. Ocean data doesn't change at the same pace that the atmospheric data is, so our wind and all our other atmospheric parameters. So we can turn that off because it's too big to download that on our SAT connection. I'm going to turn off the SAT imagery. And so you'll see here, we've already got this file size has come down to 500 kilobytes. Still very big for our Iridium Go connection. So we'll come back over here, which is where we would normally come into. And once you've got these set up on board and you're happy with them, you don't need to be changing them all the time. I mean, I've done a race where it was really rough. I'm lying on the floor of the boat, and I could press 3 buttons on my iPad because my Iridium Go was already on. 3 buttons, put the iPad down, lay on the floor for a bit, and then 20 minutes later, I'm ready to go with weather. So here we are. So we need to get this 500 kilobyte file size down. So what we need to remember here is our weather routing is going to do, you saw me make that area smaller before, our weather routing is going to cover the entire route. It's going to give us all the models for the entire route. So the weather routing is super powerful feature that we want to, that we're always going to be using. And so our grids are going to be used to just give us a visual of what's happening in those weather routes. So we can change these time steps of our grids. We can move them out. So you see, if I change that to 24 hour, all of a sudden we're down to a 100 kilobyte file. That's an easy download on an Iridium Go. Maybe I could make my area bigger, because the reality is I could dump off a bunch of stuff on here too. I mean, the wave stuff is going to be in my weather routing. We'll leave it there because we've done, we've got a really nice small file size. So I've got all the models. So if I want to look at if there's any difference in my weather routes, I can go and have a look at the models and see, why is that route want to go this way or that way? So pretty happy with that. We could drop off more of these things, but as I say, I've got a nice small area, so I don't need to drop anything else off. 10 days. I also don't need 10 days of weather for this download. So because I'm not looking that far ahead. I can come back and do that later if I want to. So yeah, so you've got a nice small file size, and then I can come over here to our settings, and I'm not comfortable with, I think the router thinks I haven't done my preparation that well, and I didn't play with this enough and realized that it was actually, we weren't going to sail quite as fast as I thought. And so I'm going to change this to 95%. I'm going to make it go 5%, the routing 5% slower, 95, and then at 90, at night we're going to go to 90. And so I'm just going to bring the speed of the boat down a little bit, so it's better reflected in my routing. I'm happy with everything else. I don't need to change it. I may never change this again for the rest of my passage, but as a friend of mine did this crossing last year, and he broke his rudder, and he had to change his polars a lot. So it was on a catamaran, so he had two rudders. So just in case you're wondering how he kept sailing. Anyway, let's carry on. So we've changed those. We've closed that box. We've got our weather routing. Our start time is now because we're underway. We're getting our GMDSS because these are small files. So if you see me turning them on and off, they're small file sizes. And I'm going to click on next. We've got that ocean data is turned off. Satellite imagery, I'm just not a fan of it because I've got my GMDSS and I've got my grids. I'll do a bigger area later. I want to see where everyone else in my rally is, and I also want to see if there's any whether I've sailed into a shipping lane or about to sail into a shipping lane. So I want to get my AIS data. I click on next, and this is where I would need to change my connection type. So I would need to click on Iridium Go, and you see here it says detecting. I don't have my Iridium Go turned on, and if I went in, I would also need to connect my computer to the Iridium Wi-Fi. So I haven't got my Iridium Go turned on. If I went on to the Iridium network, you wouldn't have to listen to me talking anymore because I'd be gone, because it would cut off the Zoom. So anyway, I'm on my home Wi-Fi, so we're not going to do the actual download, but I would select the Iridium Go. I can see all my file sizes here. I'm happy with them all. I'll just flick back to the web connection, and I will click on download all, and I'm going to download all of these parameters. Obviously, this would be much slower on my Iridium Go, but that file size we've got there, that 60 kilobytes, 65 kilobytes, we might be looking at, I don't know, 10 minutes or something. And the thing is we don't need to worry about sitting there watching it for the time that it's downloading. So long as our computer's not going to go to sleep or our iPad's not going to go to sleep, that will keep downloading. If the if the satellite connection dropped during that period, it will restart from where it was. It does what we call mid-file restart, and it will do that. It'll start from where it dropped its satellite connection. Just have a little drink. Okay, so we can see here we've got everything's downloaded. We've got our ticks over here, the blue bars gone across. Another important thing to look at here is I can see here PWG global. I've got wind, rain, pressure. So these are the parameters that I've downloaded for that model. And then here I can see what time that model updated. So I've got the date here, the 20th of the 10th, and I've got the time. So that was at 5:15 this morning, New Zealand time. And that will be whatever your computer time is, it will be relative. And so knowing when these groups updated is very important. And you can see here that the ECMWF updates later. GFS is pretty early. The PWE is a little bit later. The Spire model, which is really awesome. It's kind of its superpower is this offshore stuff. That's a little bit later. And the UKMO, you can see there that that's, you know, at 7 o'clock. That was at 7 o'clock my time. So important to note that. And also, you know, sometimes, you know, the UK Met Office, they might have an issue with their model run. And so it might not have updated, for example. You'll be like, what's PredictWind doing? It's just that we haven't got the new data, hasn't come through from them. And so you might see that in here. It's important to note this so that you might go, okay, that's actually old data. So I'm actually going to not, you know, the UK, no wonder the UKMO is doing something weird and it's sending me off in some funny direction. I'm going to ignore that information for this model run. So you see, we've got everything all downloaded. I'm going to click on close, and I'm going to come over here to my map, and you see we've just got that little tiny area there downloaded, and I probably could have gone bigger. And I've got, you know, everything set there for you know, so what's going to happen in the next 12 hours. And so I can see, you know, the first thing I'm looking at here is that all of my models agree between now and when my, you know, obviously time, I can't time travel. But so, you know, between now and when I would do my next forecast download, I've got, which is going to be when I get to here, but all my models agree. And so that's just my first glance at it. Okay, they all agree. That's great. I've got consensus across the models. I'm pretty happy about that. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to move my zoom controls. And I would click on the tables, and I come in here to my graph. And again, I can see, you know, we've got relative in this short term, we've got a pretty good consensus of our wind strength. That's our average wind strength. And if we, and our wind direction is also, they're all agreeing. And and we can just look through all of these things and see, is there anything short term or longer term that we need to start thinking about? It's good to see that the temperature increases as we go across. Pressure, again, so we can come in and we can look at all of these different parameters. Now, you will come up with your own, you know, method of how you want to do this and what you want to look at. And I, you know, in particular, you know, we're looking at the short-term stuff now. I want to know, is there, do I need to change? You know, I'm a massive fan of this wave routing stuff. You can see here, we've got an increase in, excuse me, in our role. So we might just all have a chat amongst the crew. You know, everyone can talk about that. everyone can be aware that the conditions are going to be changing. You know, like, yep, the wind speed isn't changing. The wind speed's increasing. The boat's going to start moving around a bit more. We're all aware of it. We can all be a bit more careful. And you see here our vertical acceleration goes up. How's everyone feeling? If you do start, do we need to, is anyone particularly susceptible to seasickness? Do they need to have some seasickness pills here, so that when we get to here, they're actually got the medication on board, and they're not going to get seasick, rather than trying to do the old ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We knew what was going to happen here, and we made a decision, and now we don't have sick crew on board. Slamming incidents is fine. So yeah, and then we can work our way through this. I better have a look at, so you can see we're actually at an hour, but anyway, I'll carry on. And so we can look through all of this, and as I say, you will come up with your own methodology of how you're going to do it, and what's important to you. And so we can look through this. What are we going to do in the short term? We can look at the current. We knew that there was going to be some current out here, and we can also grab our our next lat longs for where we're going. We'll put them in our chart plotter again, and for the 6, the 12, 24, so everyone knows where we're going. And and we'll talk about how we're sailing the boat. Is that a comfortable angle for us? All these things. Then we'll come back to the map, and we can look through these different parameters and see what's going on. What does the gust look like? Look at different models, and see what's going on. And then we can zoom out and we can see, okay, yep, as time goes on, we've got some divergence in our weather routing, but that's fine, because each time we update this weather routing, you'll see them always in the near term. They'll generally always be closer together. If there was one wanting to go off somewhere, do some big route up here, we would want to go and have a look at it and understand why. So I probably need to start wrapping it up. I wanted to look at, actually, I want to come back to here, to where we are. And I want to come in here, and I want to turn my AIS on. The reason I want to do this is that if we'd chosen a different route, let's say we were, for whatever reason, we were coming down here, or we'd jibed into here, we can see that we're actually going to sail into a shipping lane. And so that might be a decision that we might think twice about. Do we really want to do that? Is it faster? What would the benefit be of going in there versus that risk of going into all that shipping traffic? Or is somewhere in here, in our near term, are we going to see? Is there a couple of fishing boats together? Because you see 2 fishing boats on AIS. The reality is that there could be, 10 or 20 fishing boats, because not all of them have AIS. But if you can at least see 1 or 2, you might go, okay, I'm going to put a boundary in up here. Come and click on this little thing up the top right, and I could, stick a boundary in, and avoid, some boats if I wanted to. Let's say there was a fleet in here or whatever. It's just an example. So we could do that. And our router would avoid that particular area. We can also, I'll turn them. We can also look at our GPS tracking and see where the other boats are in our rally. Obviously, we've got all of the AIS boats. I can clear them out of there if I want to. So just a good thing to know if you want to do stuff you want to get rid of something that you don't in PredictWind that you've downloaded. You can come in here into your preferences and then go into this general setting, and we can clear anything that we've downloaded before. We can clear them. So I could clear the AIS data, for example. I could clear my grids and my routes, but generally I want to keep most of this stuff. So yeah, use it with caution, especially your tracking data. But so I've cleared away that AIS data, and then I can see the boats that are in my rally and where they are. What else did I want to look at? Oh yeah, I wanted to look at the ocean data. So we downloaded that ocean data before we left, and so we still have it in here. And just because we we have it, I just saw that there's a bit of current before. Again, we wanted to know that we're actually going, we know our wind's coming this way, and so our current, we're going with it. We're not sort of sailing into this. It's just good to know that, again, some more information. We know that we're not going to sail into this weird sea state. So, and just quickly before I wrap this up, I will come back to Grib here, and just to explain what I was talking about before, where I might get a much bigger area. So not that big, but so if I come down here and I change this box, and I might go reasonably big, like this. And so I've got this huge area that I can download, and you might be like, whoa, that's not going to work on your Iridium Go connection. Just need to move that. There we are, move those. But I can do this. I can change my resolution to 100K. I can, look, I can probably keep the 5 days. Let's see. I mean, it's big, right? But we might even go more. But I can see what model's doing the best job now, and I can go, okay, I think it's Spire is the closest to what we've got. And you see there, I turn all those other models off, and all of a sudden I've got 125 kilobytes. I turn some of these other parameters off, and I just get my wind and pressure, and then I've got 100 kilobyte file, and I've got 7 days of weather I can look at. I could probably bump that up if I wanted to. So yeah, I've only got 100 kilobytes there, and I don't need to turn all this other stuff off. Yes, I can turn it all off, but I don't have to. And I'll show you why, because I've just clicked next, and then I click next again, and then I come to this download page. I've just run my weather routing. I don't need to get it. I've just got the GMDSS. I've just got my GPS tracking. All I want is that Spire 100 kilometer, get that big area, and I just click on download there. So I just clicked on that one model, and I got that. So I would have needed to change to my Iridium Go connection. But then the 70 kilobyte file, I've just got that. Click on close, and then I've got this big area that I can look at for longer term planning. And if I click over here to weather routing, I've got my weather route. I change to Spire, and I've got this, I've got the one model and the whole route. I can just run this through and see I've run out of days there. I got to my 7 days, but I can look at the big picture, what's happening in the near term, in the next 7 days, big picture wise. So I could do that for whichever model I chose, and then I've got that area. I think I should probably stop talking now because I've gone over time, and I will stop sharing there. Thank you very much for joining us, and all the best.